The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello again. It's been a while, but this is Ralph Bohm on a legislative update. And with me today is the Education Committee clerk and a rep from Atkinson, Arlene. Introduce yourself.
Arlene Cortiello from Atkinson, yes.
And today we're going to spend most of the time on the Parental Rights Bill and a couple others. But first, on school funding. I get a lot of talk. People send me emails about school funding. Why isn't the state giving more? Blah, blah, blah. My answer is, why don't we cut our school spending? And where do you think the state funding will come from? Do you want an income tax? Do you want a sales tax? That's the only way we can increase state funding the way people want. And the last election, school district election, it was easily a way for people to cut their school taxes by like 75 cents on the dollar. But you didn't. So, the problem was, I know we should have delayed like most of the other towns did, but we didn't. So not a lot of people didn't vote because I think that it only passed 13 votes over the default. But I think if everybody had voted and wanted to, we would have cut our taxes. And so the problem is that we still don't know what it's going to be because the budget's still being worked on. The Senate's still working on it. So that's going to come in a couple weeks probably. And also, we can discuss why are children leaving public schools? Okay, and the problem with that is what we're going to be discussing in the Parental Rights Bill. But one of the problems is like our schools are about 1/3 of what they were 20 years ago. So the problem is, it used to be like 500 students in each school, 1,500. Now we got a total like 1,000. Where they go? The population of the town's increasing. Student population may be going down all over the state for public schools, but people are going to other schools. And the problem is they don't feel like they're being taken care of in the public schools. And a lot going to charter schools. Remember, charter schools are public schools. Anybody can go to them. There's just a lottery. They pick a names. So they open to everybody. And for example, we don't have one in Litchfield, but Founders Academy right up the road on Perimeter Road, North Perimeter Road in Manchester. And then there's a couple of others around. There's Academy of Science and Design in Nashville, which is a STEM school. And they're doing great.
Birch's Academy in Salem, shout out, because that's the closest one to my district.
Right.
So they've been around for quite a while.
And they're expanding. They're growing. Also in Litchfield, we have the private school, St. Francis, and they're expanding. So
yeah, a lot of Catholic schools are seeing an increase in enrollment. And a lot of that has to do with COVID because those were the schools that stayed open when the public schools were closed and parents sent their kids there and realized it was better. And they kept their kids there.
And with Catholic schools, it's more of a private school type thing because it's not really that religious anymore, because people from all religions go.
They're all welcome. It's true, but it certainly has a different sort of a set of values than a public school.
Right,
that's for sure.
Now. Mm-hmm. Okay, but now let's move to parental rights. There were two bills this year, HB 10, was it?
HB 10 was the House
version,
was
tabled,
which was,
right? So that can come back.
Voted. It didn't pass. So
no, it didn't pass.
I can't remember. That was a while back.
I think we ended up tabling.
Sadly.
But anyway, then the Senate bill, SB 272, that failed by a few votes. And let's show you what happened.
Really two. If you get to the math.
Right, so let's look at
everything.
Let's look at the chart here. Now, this was the final vote, which they made the motion to indefinitely postpone, which means it can't come back next year. It's different than laying it on the table, which you can take it off the table. But this is indefinitely postpone. This was the last vote on the bill. There was a bunch of idiotic amendments, but people trying to really kill the bill.
The guts, to take the guts out of it of what it really was trying to do.
So anyway, those, but then the final one, indefinitely postponed. And here's what, take a look, here's what happened. The final vote was 193 against 190. Now, if those two yays here on the Republic, notice not a single Democrat voted for parental rights. Not a single one. Okay? And we'll go through the bill, because one of the things we want to discuss is, in the bill itself, stuff your local school board can do. Okay, here, for example, we had 2 votes for the Republicans that voted with the Democrats. And that should come up. But anyway, if it doesn't, anyway, there was 2 votes. And the problem is, if those 2 had walked and left, that didn't vote, then it would have been 191 to 190, and then the speaker would have voted, and that would have made it a tie, so that wouldn't have passed. But the problem is, there were 8 Republicans that didn't show up.
This always seems to be the problem this year.
Right.
And it's my first year, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, but this is, attendance is everything.
Right.
They had more. The Democrats only had 3 missing, I think.
Right. Really, there were 7 missing because the speaker counts as not voting unless it's a tie. But there you go. You can look at the names. There's Bean. And then at least say excused. Basically, all be excused is you got to call in beforehand and say, hey, I won't be there because I have a family problem, or I'm sick, or I'm working, or something. And I look at it this way, for people working, if used to be a saying, if you can't do the crime, don't do the time. If you can't do the time, don't run for office. And that's the problem. And there are people here that, if you look at the names, there's Fred Plett, Julius Sodi, isn't he on education?
No.
Oh, he used to be. I'm sorry. I'm not. James Summers, Douglas Trotter, Kevin Verville, and Dan Wolf. Now, Dan Wolf would have voted with the Democrats anyway if he was there. But the problem is there was only 3 Democrats missing. Of course. Remember, we have it right now, I think the count is like 200, because one person resigned. 200, we had 201, now it's 200 to, I think, 198,
196 right now.
196, okay. There's a couple of, there's one rep from Nashua that was elected, but he hasn't been sworn in yet, and so he's not going to. There's another 2 reps that are going special elections, one in Nashua and one someplace else. Mm-hmm. So the point is, it's getting ridiculous. If you run for office, hey, so the
then
question.
There are excuses. I mean, there are things that happen if you're really sick or.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
to me, it seems like if you're just very sick or the death in the family. Other than that, work you have to get. Yeah. It's hard to see how there can be an excuse.
But the point is, I mean, it's like people on vacation, whatnot. Now, in the first year of the session, you better be available April, May, and June. That's it. I mean, those are the big, for the budget and whatnot for the first year. So you don't go on vacation.
For the full house voting. I know in my committee, I'm on the education committee, which is the busiest committee.
Right.
And it was a full-time job through January, February, March.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It was. Not to discourage anyone who might be thinking of running. It's definitely.
You pick a committee that.
You can always get on a committee that's not as active.
I was on education.
Because they're not all as active as that. Yeah.
This is my 8th term, and I was on education for 6 of those terms. So I started on election law, and now I'm ending on election law. So, and election law, luckily we're only meeting 1 day a week. But I'm glad
education was meeting 4 days a week, and I have a full-time job in addition to this.
Yeah.
So, but I've made it to every. It's just so important to be there.
But committee meetings you can miss.
Yes,
I mean, except when they're execing, then you
Execing,
need
no.
to be there or
That-
get somebody.
You can
will.
get a replacement if you give them
Replacement.
enough warning, and that's very important, because these committees are 10-10.
Oh, you're right.
and-
Yeah, ours is 9-9. We lost.
Oh, okay.
We lost 2.
Well, at least it's balanced. As long as you have that balance.
It's
yeah.
tied. And, okay, now let's look at the bill itself. Okay. And part of this bill, we can probably determine that your school boards can do this. One of the things we have to remember is your superintendent does the curriculum and is responsible for that, but he works for the school board. The school board has one employee, that's the superintendent. So your school board can tell the superintendent what to do. A lot of people argue, the superintendent's responsible. Yeah, responsible to the school board. So, and people, a lot of even school board people don't realize that. The superintendent works for the school board. And I was on the school board for 6 years, and selectman for 6 years, and budget committee for 16 years. And, so, so I know what's going on in towns and how it works. Okay.
So just to interject, a lot of this bill, SB 272, it's a Bill of Rights, and it brings together laws from throughout the RSAs that pertain to parents' rights and education. So most of these are already laws.
Right, in law.
In law. So it's not like, so the schools have to do this stuff already. The new additions were mostly related to the controversy of the bill, which we can get into.
Yeah, my argument is schools are there for education, not indoctrination. And the problem is, and we've seen that with CRT, and we had a big meeting in Litchfield on that a couple of years ago about that not supposed to be there.
This is one of the reasons people are leaving the schools, from the question from the beginning, is because they're realizing, parents are waking up and realizing that their children are being indoctrinated.
Right.
Through a social emotional learning is another thing, not sticking to the basics. It's all this critical race theory.
You wonder why math is way down and English is way down. People aren't learning because of the focus on indoctrination. And I look at this, people are waking up to the woke. And we see that happening across the country. Look at Budweiser, Bud Light, Target. Nobody's going there. I mean, and LA Dodgers, they're going to be having a lousy season. What they're doing, with me, what they're doing is a hate crime. But anyway, that's what's happening in your schools. And so one of the things, okay, we're also part of right now in law is the right to inspect any instruction material used as part of the education curriculum for a child within a reasonable period following a request. In other words, you can ask. And we've had this when I was on the school board. Some parents came in about some short stories that was in the textbook that the kids were reading, and this was in high school, that were totally inappropriate. Of course, we were blamed for book burning and all that. No, it's inappropriate. And now at grade school, they're doing inappropriate books, for those grades. And this was at high school. One of the books I mentioned this once before was the short stories with the cocaine diet. Okay, and other reps, that's when we did this law some years ago, and the rep tried to read that story on the House floor and wasn't allowed to because of the language. The same thing happened to Governor DeSantis in Florida when he tried to read a book that was in elementary school in Florida, and immediately the cables were shut off because they couldn't show it. Hey,
anyone who wants this book not there is called a book banner, and this is happening in public libraries too.
Right, yeah.
So.
Yeah, and we're not,
I think we need some laws to make this clearer. But you're pointing out what's in the bill already that's codified in law. The problem,
right, but let's move on too.
Oh, okay. Well, the intent was to put all these laws together so parents would know.
Right. So, also, the right to access and review all education records. That's already in law. Okay?
And it should be.
Okay, now, And non-academic service, which we brought up, I put in a couple of bills over the years. But the youth risk behavior survey is still opt out. Everything else is opt in. In other words, the parent's got to sign, yes, my kid will take this survey.
I think we heard a bill in the education department regarding this
Yeah.
opt-in, opt-out thing, and how it
Yeah.
should be an
They
opt-in.
wanted everything
Yeah.
opt out, opt in. But, yeah, but remember, we tried that last term and it failed, but the Senate killed it. The House passed it, the Senate killed it. Okay. Right to access and review all medical records of a child maintained for a school. So in other words, if you're, and there are things that protect children, already laws. In other words, if a child goes to the teacher and says, hey, if I tell my parents this, I'm going to get beat up. The school then responsibility is called DCYS. That's it. You don't then try to do something else. Okay.
And that was their big argument in the 8 hours of hearings. Such the big argument kept being that about, oh, the children will not be safe. And yet it's very easy, as you just did, to refute that counter argument.
Right. Yeah. And then it's not the teacher's responsibility. It's not the school's responsibility. And the problem is, when's it gonna come down to, does the schools become medical facilities? With all the stuff they're doing.
Yeah, with the vaccines and all that.
Right.
Mental health, too. They're trying to push that so that mental health is
Right.
addressed in school, which is
Yeah.
not
Also,
appropriate.
one of the parts of the bill was the right to inquire of the school or school personnel and to be truthfully and completely informed if their child is being identified by any name other than the name in which the child was enrolled in the school, or any nickname that a reasonable person would understand to be commonly, in other words, Dick instead of Richard, or Bob instead of Robert, those kind of things.
And this was the big controversial section. These three parts that start with that, the right to be, where is it?
Informed.
The right to inquire of the school and be truthfully and completely informed.
Right.
And I got back to just saying, you shall not lie. If we can't trust schools with this information, I think overall this tells us, again, another reason I think parents are pulling their kids out of the public schools is they don't trust them.
Right.
And this is just going to make it worse.
What my argument to some people that are arguing this is, let's go the other way. I mean, this is basically, okay, another part of the right to inquire to the school or school personnel to be truthfully and completely informed if the child is being identified or referred by school staff as being a gender other than that of which the child was identified or referred when enrolled. Now, what's happening in schools, the school itself is telling these kids and sending them to therapy this is where you can go, don't tell your parents, and we won't tell your parents. That's wrong. What if it was the other way around? What if a parent sends their kid to school knowing that the kid is gay? Okay, and that's fine. But what then if the school starts sending the kids to therapy saying they're not gay? I mean, it can go either way. No, the school should have no say in this. Mm-hmm. And when my granddaughter was in school in 2009, 2010, and the junior year and senior year, there was openly gay students. One, nobody liked, not because he was gay, but because the way he presented himself. Another one, he was voted best liked. So the kids don't care, but the problem was, and everybody knew it, the parents knew it, the teachers knew it, but nobody went out of their way to send them to therapy one way or the other. And that's not the school's job. The school's job is to teach, not indoctrinate. And that's what's happening in the schools today. Now, all of these, if you look at the bill, you look up to, and I'm challenging school board members. Remember what I said, the superintendent works for you. And I know we have some school board members that say they agree with this in 272. Then what you do, is make a motion in public saying, I make a motion that we tell the superintendent to do blank, what's in this bill. And take any one of these. And let's see how the rest of your school board votes. That's, the law failed this time. And mainly because of people not showing up. And look at who's didn't show up. I mean, because this is passed around the state, the YouTube of this. So find out who didn't show up. And don't take excuses. Some excuses. Now, a year ago in the session, you weren't there, but I collapsed. And if you go to YouTube and look up my name, that's the first thing that shows up. Everybody said, hey, that was a year ago. And for some reason, the first thing that shows up. And what happened was medicine I was taking. We went through this before for 25 years. But anyway, I'm a new medicine now. But the problem was, I missed some votes in the afternoon.
That's an excuse.
That's a good excuse. When the ambulance comes and takes you, that's a good excuse.
To Representative Horgan, who
he choked on.
I didn't know that was not unprecedented. Okay.
Right, and he choked. Yeah, but the thing was, that's a good excuse. So over the many years, I don't think I missed that many votes. But and I don't look at the excuse thing. I don't mean, because sometimes you do. Maybe I remember, 2 years ago, we were there at 4 o'clock in the morning.
I heard about that.
It was a deadline, and I know somebody.
That's a legend.
Oh yeah. Somebody, because the deadline's got to happen. Mm-hmm. And so we were there from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock the following morning. And I know one of the reps that he had to work the next day, and he says, I'm just going to leave here and go to work. There's a problem, but if you can't do the time, don't run for office. And that's basically, so for school board members, do yourself right. Take these things and see what you like of these bills. That's in this bill, a right to know what extracurricular activities, clubs, organizations the child is participating in. And federal law provides for some of this already, but make sure for the school, make sure that it's being done.
I was particularly surprised about that one you just mentioned, the right to know what extracurricular activities, clubs, or organizations your child's in. That was controversial, as much so as all the sort of the gender identity parts above it. So that was surprising that part was so controversial. Maybe you would find out your kids were in a LGBTQ club, but in general, it's not about that. I mean, you want to know if your kids are playing a sport, you have to pick them up. So I was surprised at that one.
Yeah.
That was called out in one of the amendments as something to be pulled from the bill.
Yeah,
it seems silly.
Remember, this could go either way. Then why not say everything changes in a few years and it goes the opposite direction?
Because we'll have more Republicans, let's hope?
No, or...
Well, what you have to do is when voting, and I had a letter to the editor.
No, I'm talking about schools themselves, the parents themselves. All of a sudden the school is doing the opposite. They're not sending the kids to therapy for wanting to be LBG, whatever.
Oh, right. It goes both ways, yeah.
They want to go take them to therapy and not be gay, type thing that they, But
it's hard to imagine
so be careful of the whole thing. Careful what you wish for.
But I was just going to say, I wrote this letter to the editor, the union leader, and the purpose of it was, first of all, I was really mad because I didn't get to give my speech on the floor on this bill. So I was like, I got to use this for something. And so I wrote it I submitted to the paper. And the takeaway is, right, to the parents, rather than addressing the House, I'm addressing parents. A lot of parents are going to start pulling their kids out of the public schools because enough's enough. You can't trust the school personnel.
Right.
And also, when you go vote in 2024, vote for the candidates who will truly support this and the ones who will be there to support it. Take a look at these attendance records, and if your rep is absent too much, they're not representing you. So boot them
Okay.
out.
Okay, we got a couple of minutes
Oh,
left.
wow, that went fast. This has been fun. I want to do this again.
Okay, good.
So many things to talk about we didn't get to.
Right, but one of the things we want to cover is, well, let's be...
Shall we finish with that interesting
Yeah.
story?
Yeah.
Weird story. There was a bill, HB 35, in which the eating disorder hotline would be required to be on student IDs. Right now, you have the suicide hotline on student IDs.
And the drug hotline.
What's that?
And the drug hotline also?
I'm not sure. I thought it was only the one
thought we
number.
had- we had two.
Well, the problem is, and this in Education Committee came out 14-6, and the 6 of us who didn't vote for it were made to feel really bad, like we didn't care about kids with eating disorders. That wasn't it at all. The line was only manned a few hours. It wasn't a 24/7 hotline, and that's what we objected to. So now it comes out a few days ago that the company that runs this, the organization, replaced its staff with an AI chatbot. Now, if the House had known that when we were voting on it, I'm sure this wouldn't have passed.
Right.
And now there's harmful information being given by this chatbot, so now that's been pulled. So just a weird situation that maybe the governor can veto it somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, because I remember,
But-
yeah, something, yeah, you pass off the information to them. My thing on that is because I remember we put the suicide hotline in when I was on education. I thought we also added the drug hotline. Now my argument, then we put this in, so maybe
many
we
more?
need one hotline. Press 1 for
Right.
suicide. Press 2 for this. Press 3, 4, 5, 6.
Which isn't ideal, but yeah,
This is
those
get,
kind of lines
this
can-
is,
Because you have a little ID. I started picturing these IDs that would be like the size of, this piece of paper, and the
or
kids
you-
would have to wear
or
it
you
around.
keep making the print
Right.
tinier and tinier and tinier. And who pays for this? The local school. Isn't that a 28A issue? But the thing is, so that's things that, are happening. We have a session next Thursday coming up to vote on a lot of stuff, nothing
Right.
major.
There's an interesting education one coming up, SB 213, regarding social media policies, which keep an eye on that one. I voted against this because it would have kids signing up for LinkedIn, and it's again, I was in the minority, but there were reasons. So
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
remember.
vote-
One of my bills I did many years ago, along with one of the most liberal Democrats, we worked on this bill. It was to protect students' social media accounts. In other words, the school can't ask the student, "Give me a username and password." No, no, no,
Right.
no. You can't do that. And but you can ask the parents for it. But that's fine. And so that was a big fight then, and the argument then that we were saying was, wait a minute, Facebook already says you got to be 13 to be on it, but
And-
nobody ever checks.
And just to circle back, it's all about back to basics. Why do kids need any of this social media in their curriculum? Okay, they need to learn to reading, writing, and cursive. That was the big win. That was the big win in this time. The cursive bill was passed.
Yeah, it's
so,
been a few years.
yeah.
A few years coming. So anyway, time is out. So thank you, Arlene.
Well,
and
thank you for
maybe
the
we could
opportunity. This was fun.
Come again. Yeah,
I would like to. Yes.
Yeah, Erica is still having a lot of problems on her own, so that's why we haven't seen her in a while. But hopefully, maybe we'll end with her again. But so anyway, thank you, Arlene, and
Thank you.
see you after in a couple of weeks with the budget.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.